I think one of the hardest things in this entire series is trying to introduce people who need no introduction. How do you introduce someone who's everyone knows? But then it's a job I have to do. So here's Anil Srinivasan, musician, entrepreneur, educator, a lover of Madras, and a good friend. So Anil is not going to play a song for you. He isn't going to tell you how to educate your children. He's not going to do any of that. He's merely going to share his own memories of his childhood with us.
Hi Vinita, and it's such a pleasure to be in the Krida Experience Center today. And
Thank you.
I can kick myself for not having come earlier. It's so much fun with Kamar Katte and with Daai Katte, and I'm very happy to see 9 Months Morris and many other
Daddy,
games.
as they call it in
Daddy.
India.
So all these wonderful games, and lovely to be here.
Thank you. And just because it's been a long time since you've come, doesn't mean you can't come more often.
I should. I definitely should. And to everybody watching, I will have to say it's so much fun to be in a space like this. The brightness of the primary colors here, lots of snacks.
Very important, isn't it?
Yes. Look at me,
and games,
lots of snacks.
Food and games somehow always went hand in hand.
Go together. And in fact, when you were talking earlier to me about experiences of childhood, I was just about to say that
Food.
Nothing more.
Manga.
The coming together of snacks, especially not proper food, but snacks.
Yeah.
And games and snacks went together, and summer holidays or less busy school days were always filled with both.
Yeah. And the best of all was always manga you stole from a tree.
Especially your neighbor's tree.
Correct. Absolutely. Though frankly, my neighbor's tree mangas were quite bad, but we still love to.
The point is there's a special juiciness to a neighbor's mangoes.
True that. True that. So what did you do as a child? Did you play games? Or were you born playing on the piano?
I think the piano came into my childhood a lot because when I was 2.5, I think my mother had already gifted me a toy piano, and I was quite obsessed with it. So all my playing was actually on a toy piano, which then graduated into a little keyboard that my uncle, whom you know, your friend's father, got me from Singapore, and then finally to a real piano. And my entire childhood was obsessed about music. It was about playing the piano. Games as such, outside of the more organized sport, I used to improvise my own games.
Oh, interesting.
And I still do.
Nice.
So snakes and ladders were never just simple snakes and ladders for me. I would imagine, I don't know if I'm a little bit of a freak of nature, but I was one of those kids who would set myself math problems and physics problems or whatever in middle school by making them squares in the snakes and ladders.
Oh, how cute.
And if I got the answer right, then I will advance. If I got the answer wrong,
you come down, is it? How cute.
So I used to do things like that. Many times I would place my textbooks on the piano, the manuscript stand, and I'll be creating songs for myself, which is something you're also very fond of doing. And the history book would actually become a song.
Oh.
So in 1498, Vasco was in India's gate, and things like that, and all these kinds of songs would come in. That's kind of how I would remember stuff. So I think improvisation and play was a very, very big part of childhood.
I just have one question.
Sure.
You played the snakes and ladder with physics and maths problems. Did anyone else play with you?
No,
You played
it
on
was
your
just
own?
me by myself. My mother remembers this more clearly than I used to conduct imaginary classes to imaginary students.
Okay.
And that included a PT period for them. So, so I had about 12 students in my imaginary class. And there was a little study room in our house, and it had wooden shutters. And the wooden shutters would become my improvised blackboard, and I would actually take chalk and write on it, and I'd actually start conducting classes to these imaginary students. I had favorites in that imaginary class.
Oh my God! Were any of them ever imaginarily punished?
Many times,
Ah.
many times. And there was a lot of games as part of it. And I'm just trying to relive the magic of board games.
Yeah.
And that was especially during summer holidays or vacations, and all my brothers, cousins, everybody would be joining in on that.
Yeah.
There'd be cousins coming in from out of town, or summer holiday trips to the hill stations, and a lot of it is about very good food. Actually, I don't know whether very good or very bad. It was food, and it was good food, and games.
Yeah.
And most of the time, it was very improvised games. I don't think
Yeah.
I think we were all a generation which played definitely outside the rules, not by the rules. We used to make up our own rules, and
We used to cheat.
we
Part of the
don't
game.
call it cheating. We call it
We
making
call it
up
changing
our
up
own
with
rules.
rules.
So that's about it. But that's a large part of it. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that creativity that came with making up the rules or making up games when you had nothing to play with, with sticks, with stones, with. And I think that's something that's come down through traditional games.
Aeroplane Pandi, I think, was a big part of childhood. I'm also now remembering. So we made a lot of friends playing these unstructured games. And oftentimes, now that I think about it, it was beyond social class and distinction, right?
Absolutely.
So there would be, there'd be some building construction going on, and the children of those workers would come and play with us.
And it never mattered.
I don't think it mattered at all, and there was so much of just joy.
Yeah.
And we weren't so conscious. What I think back with gratitude a lot is how my parents had absolutely no clue where I was or how I was doing, or
Absolutely.
I don't think they cared. I mean, now that I think about it, it borders on neglect that they just didn't even care.
I think there were simpler times, at least in our mind, safer times.
Definitely.
So, but I know, and many people who've done this series of conversations with me have said the same thing. Somewhere they'll go saying, "Where is the child?" That's
Literally,
only time.
because I was either at our house or I would be in one of 2 or 3 friends. There's no more.
Or roaming the streets between the houses.
And outside on the street, we all used to be playing. So I think nobody was really worried.
Yeah.
And we would oftentimes fall. I think it was a mark of great childhood courage that you had a tear or you had a cut or this was normal.
Yeah.
And I don't ever remember our parents going into a panic just because you cut your knee or whatever.
In fact, you wouldn't even go to your parents. You'll just
Usually
go wash
they
it
don't.
under the thing and tie a
Correct.
dirty hanky
Correct.
around
and
it.
burn all.
Burn all.
Okay.
I remember burn all. It
That
was
was it.
for everything, no?
I think we all used to improvise our own surgeries, right? You had a cut, you'll put a burn all and put a bandage, which you're not supposed to do actually. But we would do things. I don't think, and parents would rarely, if ever, get upset about things like that. That's what I remember the most. And coming to think of it, with those stones that they're using in masonry for construction, we used to actually, steal those stones. Because the workers were working with these stones, but we'll steal those stones and use that to play Aeroplane Pandi. And Aeroplane Pandi, instead of putting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, sometimes we'd put, in my case, I used to put the names of music notes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So the idea was that, you make up your tune as you go along.
Oh, as you hop along.
Yeah.
Oh, how cool is that?
I used to call it my musical Pandi.
Oh, that's too cool. We should do that one day.
And that was very inspired by, that song from The Sound of Music.
Where they go hopping, do re mi on the
So,
steps.
and I immediately decided to sort of
Do the
try that
same
using
thing.
Pandi.
With do re mi or sarigama?
Sarigama. So it was just fun. And because I was a musical child, I used to be taking a lot of perverse pleasure in the fact that I was the only one who would get the exact sequence right. The other children wouldn't. So I'd always win at this game.
Yeah, that's a little unfair advantage, isn't it?
But in childhood, all is fair. So
That's true.
So there was that. Then Reader's Digest, our parents used to subscribe to, and we'd collect a series of Reader's Digests and make that into an improvised net on the dining table, and we'd play table tennis.
You're talking about the Reader's Digest condensed book, the fat ones, yeah.
So
I think I've done the same
series
thing.
of 5 or 6 of them would form the net because it's the right height.
And play table tennis.
And then one Reader's Digest each as our table tennis paddle, right? And we'd use any ball, some plastic ball that was available. It doesn't matter what it was. But all of this, I think this improvisation was a big part of. And I mean, it was in India where you didn't, I mean, let's face it, we didn't get too many things.
True.
Most of the time, you couldn't afford like very expensive things either. We grew up in very simple, or even if they were.
And even if you could, there weren't that many options of things to buy.
And I think, you normally didn't go to your parents and ask them to keep on spending on frivolities, right? Yeah. So you just like make do with what you have. So,
but we made do very well.
Very well.
Very well. Very happy childhood memories.
I think that's actually helped us a lot as adults, no? So.
And you were in Vidya Mandir.
Yes.
So were you a very quiet boy, or were you, I mean, as riotous as most students?
Definitely
climbing
not
trees?
riotous. I think on the spectrum, I would be more on the quiet side. I won't say quiet. I think I was very studious.
Okay.
Definitely music was a big part of, so I was always involved in all the music and cultural activities, and I think I was a very sociable child, but not exuberant.
Okay.
Probably, select friends and that kind of thing. Not the gregarious person that I've become now. So.
You also talked about playing with a lot of friends and cousins. How far do you think your playing together helped build stronger bonds with your cousins? I mean,
I think it definitely did. I think what it also taught you is how to lose very, very gracefully.
Truly.
And I mean, we'd call each other names and we'd say cheaters, you cheaters never prosper. I mean, we all grew up saying all these things to each other. But I think it taught you to take some things in your stride. Right, that it can happen.
That you're not always a winner.
And also, very importantly, that some people will have unfair advantages. I mean, they were always the more athletic cousins. They were always the more well-built cousins. They were always some people will get certain things much faster. And I was never a very good contact sport person, right? And those kids would look at me and say, but you have the advantage when it comes to music. So,
and your musical airplane party.
So people would be like, it balances out, right? Some people are good at some things. And I think these things you learnt by doing.
By osmosis almost. No one taught you these as lessons.
I think I'm a big believer in learning by doing, right? That if you do something, you just learn it. But, I mean, even if you think about games, right? Card games. The first time I played bridge or the first time I played something like that, I remember my father saying, just start playing it, you'll get it. Right? There's no point giving you like 3 lectures on. And nowadays people sit with so many rules and this thing and looking up the internet and all. I think most of this for us was just start playing it. You'll lose the
figure
first
it out on the way.
You'll just figure it out after that.
Absolutely. And do you and your cousins still get together often? Do you ever play games together often?
So I'll tell you, not really. I wish it were more, honestly. But I'm very happy that even 2 years ago, one of my older cousins in California, whom you know, her husband, me, and all 3 of us played tennis. And it was so much fun, although we are all much older now and some of us struggling to run across the court. But the point is, it's still enjoyed, and I found myself very happily slipping back into a language I haven't used since I was 6 years old.
Yeah, that really
so when
makes a
those
difference.
Opportunities arise, it's so much fun. So,
what about friends? Friends you played with? Do you remember any of them? Special memories you shared with friends over play?
I do. I mean, my neighbor, one of my neighbors, one of my childhood classmates who still remains a very dear friend, because we all lived within the same neighborhood. It was just across the street. And by default, therefore, and we were of a similar age group. My nephew, technically he's my nephew, but he was so close to, in age.
Yeah.
That so we were all a certain gang of a particular group.
Yeah.
And we were, the victims, and my older brothers and their friends were the aggressors. Because they wouldn't allow us to join in their their games, right? So, and even now when my brother's friends and, me and maybe 1 or 2 of these others meet somewhere, it's like, apponi and vidamate. So that continues.
That theme continues.
I don't think you ever lose any of it. It becomes a part of your cells.
And your memories.
It's in your body. I mean, most of it. And I think what I can say is those friendships bonded over play like that probably last your lifetime, because it's you don't love your friends for just being your friends. You love your friends because they represent a part of you that you love.
Yeah. That's
know.
a nice way of putting it.
It's when you see them, it reminds you of that part of you which you unconditionally like, because it's a very happy part of you.
And a very innocent part of you.
And when our parents were around, and I mean, it brings back a lot of very, very good things.
Yeah.
So I think that keeps, that cements that bond
Yeah.
together with all those people.
What about grandparents, Anil?
Oh, very big part of my growing up.
years?
And my paternal grandparents were gone before I was born, but my maternal grandparents were very much there. My maternal grandmother used to be. Some days they would make me sleep next to her. I think a lot of stories came to me that way, and I think very recently, Mr. M.V. Subaya asked at a gathering. He said, "Where have all the grandmothers gone?" And I thought that was a very good question.
Yeah.
Because today the grandmothers are watching TV.
Yeah. Or they're busy working, yeah.
Or working. And my grandmother used to tell me some of these stories, and you got to learn a lot about things that they would talk about certain words in Tamil I would not have known but for them.
Yeah.
So I remember I made up an imaginary country. I'm very fond of making imaginary things up. And I used that imaginary country to teach myself geography. So this imaginary country would have stalactites and stalagmites and all kinds of impossible places. It would have limestone quarries right in the middle of a city. And I would make up stories about it, right? And, I used to draw maps of this. And I particularly remember that the shape of the story was of the country was like a molar teeth. And because it had to grow according to my story.
Yeah.
And in geography in school, they were teaching us about isthmuses and peninsulas. So therefore, the
They
next
had
day,
to have a-
the next day, the country will sprout to isthmuses and peninsulas. Right? But so much, I think you learn so much when you do it like that, and importantly, when nobody stops you.
Yeah. It's all about the games, isn't it?
It is.
It is all.
It is. Life is Krida.
Ha! What better note can we end on? Thank you
I didn't
so
want
much.
to say that just to talk about Krida, but life is Krida and Krida is life.
Yeah.
Because
Krida is all play after all. Thanks, Anil. That
Thank
was
you.
so
Thank you,
delightful.
Vinita.
And one day, if I don't think I'm too old, I'll play the musical Aeroplane Pandi with you.